The city court was a routine, almost mechanical place. Each day passed with relentless regularity, like a well-oiled clock. The cases followed one another, the accused took the stand one after the other, their lawyers deploying well-rehearsed arguments, and the judges, like impassive arbiters, rendered their verdicts with the rigor of a skill learned and repeated endlessly. No event disturbed this rhythm. Nothing really made a difference anymore. No case seemed unique enough to break this monotony. But that day everything would change. Clarice Beaufort, a respected appeals judge, sat behind her desk, ready to start a new day of work. The files, as numerous as ever, piled up in front of her. She leafed through them mechanically, her gaze wandering over the names, the dates, the accusations. The routine of work was taking over her little by little, and the unreality of the situation reassured her. But then, a simple name written in black letters on a sheet of paper caught his attention.
Julien Lemoine.
As suddenly as an icy breeze, the name hit her hard.
Julien Lemoine.
She froze. A shiver ran down his spine, his heart seemed to skip a beat, and a tumult of memories erupted in his mind. This name was not that of an anonymous accused among many others. No, this name took her back much further, to a bygone, distant era, a time when she was not yet the impassive and respected judge that she was today. Julien Lemoine was his childhood friend, his constant accomplice.
A brilliant, carefree young man full of dreams.
The one with whom she had shared her first revolts against authority, her deepest confidences, her plans for the future, her hopes and aspirations. Their friendship had been forged in the heat of summer days spent running in the wheat fields, chatting under the large oak trees of the village, dreaming of a better life, far from the constraints of their small provincial town. Julien was not just a friend, he was a soul brother, a partner in rebellion, a man who shared his ideals of justice, freedom and dignity. They were young, and the world seemed at their feet. Their childhood dreams were big, immense, limitless. There was no room for compromise or failure in their world. But life had its own plans, and over time, the paths of Clarice and Julien had separated. After high school, Julien had disappeared into the whirlwind of adult life. Clarice had continued her path with determination, climbing the ranks of justice to become one of the most respected judges in the country. But Julien had vanished from his life, like a shooting star that we never see again after his brief appearance. And now this same Julien, the man she had not seen for more than 20 years, found himself in the dock. Clarice felt destabilized. A murder. That was the accusation. A heinous crime, an act of violence that the city did not see coming. Everyone was talking about this murder, this innocent victim, and the arrest of Julien Lemoine, the main suspect. The news shook the community. It wasn't just a murder, it was a tragedy. And at the center of this drama, there was a man she had loved like a brother. How could this have happened? Julien Lemoine, this man she had always perceived as a pure soul, an idealist ready to defend truth and justice at all costs. How could he be involved in such horror? The day of the trial arrived, fraught with palpable tension. Clarice took her place behind her desk, her mind still prey to memories of this past that she thought was buried. Her gaze fixed on the accused box, she finally saw him.
Julien.
He was there. The marked features, the tired look, the older, harder face. But despite everything, there was still Julien. She recognized him instantly, as if time had failed to erase the imprint of their shared childhood. However, something had changed. The coldness that emanated from him today was foreign to the man he had been. A devastated man, broken perhaps, but icy cold, devoid of the vibrant energy he once had. He carried the accusation on his shoulders like a cloak too heavy, a burden that he seemed to have neither the strength nor the desire to remove. Clarice forced herself not to let anything show. She focused on the facts, on the procedure. But his mind was in a constant battle with his emotions. Julien's gaze, devoid of guilt, challenging her at every moment, pushed her to her limits. It was as if he knew she was hesitant, unable to get past what he had been to her. He seemed to understand her torment, the pain she felt at seeing him like this, accused of such an atrocious crime. The witnesses paraded one after the other, providing their testimonies and their proofs. Every word, every accusation seemed to reinforce the strength of the accusation. The murder took place in particularly sordid circumstances. The murder weapon had been found, witnesses had seen Julian near the crime scene, and several physical pieces of evidence seemed to corroborate this theory. Julian Lemoine was the main suspect, and the affair appeared to be proceeding on well-trodden lines. Clarisse listened, trying to keep her professional distance. But each testimony, each detail brought to the file seemed to revive his childhood memories. She saw herself again, her and Julian, sitting on the steps of the old school, discussing everything and nothing, their dreams of grandeur, their shared vision of a just world. How could this man, the one who always wanted to change the world, be linked to such a terrifying act? She relived every moment of their friendship, every gesture, every smile. How could a man like Julian become what he had become today? She forced herself to regain control of her thoughts. But in the privacy of his mind, a doubt was growing. Was the evidence really enough? Had Julian really killed? What if it was all a mistake? One afternoon, as the sun slowly set behind the shutters of her office, Clarisse found herself immersed in a sea of confused thoughts. The file in front of her seemed heavier and heavier, as if each page weighed on her shoulders. The silence, usually calming, became oppressive. Her eyes lingered on the words that danced before her, but her mind was elsewhere, trapped in the memory of Julian. The sound of a door suddenly opening startled her. A cold shiver ran through her body before she looked up. He was there. Julian. His features hadn't changed, at least in broad terms, but something in his eyes had evolved. That piercing gaze, imbued with infinite sadness, was the same, but today it carried the heaviness of years of separation and the trials endured. He was there in this cold room, as if there hadn't been all this time, as if the past and the present were mixed into one reality, confused and confusing. "Clarisse," he whispered, his voice hoarse, full of memories and regrets. His words seemed to hang in the air, a desperate plea in a frozen universe. Clarisse stood up abruptly, her heart racing, but a strange feeling of paralysis seized her. His legs no longer responded, frozen in a mixture of hesitation and stupor. Her memories were rushing, and her instinct was to run, but part of her knew it was too late. She couldn't run away from this confrontation. Not now.
How cold you.
You know what they accuse me of, you know what they say about me. But you know me. You know I'm not that kind of man, right? Julian's words, imbued with a sincerity that she had always known, hit her hard. Her mind spiraled, torn between loyalty to her childhood friend and the reality of the role she played today. Judge. A role that she had always taken with unwavering seriousness, but which suddenly found itself called into question. His eyes closed for a moment, as if to escape this whirlwind of feelings that threatened to invade him. She forced herself to take a deep breath before answering, her voice betraying the effort she was making to remain calm. "Julian, you have always been my friend, but what you are accused of, it is too serious for me to turn a blind eye to." The words came out of her like a declaration of war against her own feelings. She knew it, she had to be impartial, she could not let herself be guided by memories. But the pain of this decision, of this separation between duty and heart, paralyzed her. He nodded slowly, as if in his tired gaze he already knew that his words would not find immediate comfort. But in the intensity of his gaze, Clarisse saw something much deeper than simple resignation. It was the struggle of a man who knew he was going to lose, but who was still fighting for a truth he hoped would be recognized. "Do you really think I would have lied to you after all this time? I've been in a situation you can't even imagine."
Please, Clarisse, believe me.
His words rang through the air like a broken promise, a desperate plea that touched Clarisse's heart more than she wanted to admit. A shiver ran through her as she looked down, unable to bear the purity of that gaze. The embrace between loyalty and duty was devouring her from the inside out. She turned away abruptly, as if this decision should escape her body, her trembling hands. The days that followed were marked by growing concern. Clarisse, haunted by memories of their shared youth, found herself in a whirlwind of questions. The evidence was overwhelming, yes, but was Julian really the monster he was being portrayed as? Or, as he claimed, was he the victim of a plot she could not yet grasp? She dove into the file, trying to understand each element, each testimony. The more she searched, the more the shadow of doubt settled in her mind. Inconsistencies. Witnesses who appeared to have connections to powerful people. Evidence that had been manipulated, as if an invisible thread had led Julian towards this accusation. But who? And why him? The puzzle seemed more and more complicated.
Night after night, Clarice found no rest.
During one of her long, solitary vigils in her office, as she reviewed a new statement, a crucial detail first escaped her, then suddenly grasped it. A key witness, a member of the victim's entourage, had lied. This revelation, like a spark in the dark night, brought out a new truth. The evidence against Julian was not as solid as it seemed. The murderer was someone else, and the truth, strange as it may sound, seemed entirely different. Clarice then found herself faced with a devastating moral dilemma. What she had believed to be true all these weeks was crumbling before her eyes. Had Julian been the victim of personal revenge, of manipulation? Perhaps an old grudge, a long-buried hatred. But a more urgent question arose. Was Julian really innocent? At that precise moment, Clarice felt that her entire life, everything she had believed in, was turning upside down. The truth seemed so elusive, and the path to justice so complex. Should she risk her career, her integrity to save a man she had once loved like a brother, even if it meant breaking the law? Or should she comply with the norms, condemn a man she thought guilty, to save her honor and her reputation as a judge? The day of the verdict arrived. The air was heavy, saturated with palpable tension. Each moment seemed to stretch, suspended in anticipation. Clarice felt her heart beat harder with every step she took towards the court. Her eyes scanned the room, taking in the anxious gazes that turned towards her. The room was drowned in deafening silence, as if the entire universe was holding its breath, waiting for the moment she would speak. The weight of history rested on his shoulders, not only to judge Julian's future, but also his own future. She stood up slowly, each movement betraying the tension within her. Her hands shook slightly as she sat up, trying to hide the uncertainty bubbling inside her. Every look, every whisper, seemed to scrutinize her, examine her, push her to doubt. Clarice knew that this judgment was not only a judicial act, but a decisive moment in her life. The echo of her decision would resonate far beyond this room, and the ramifications of her choice would be experienced by both Julian and herself, forever marked by the gravity of the issue. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to calm the whirlwind of thoughts and emotions that threatened to overwhelm her. The evidence had been carefully examined, the testimonies had been compared, but the uncertainty remained, like a persistent cloud. His memories of a faithful friend, a man of character and trust, had clashed with the cold reality of the legal system. Should she trust the person she once knew, or the raw truth that the documents and witnesses imposed on her? The dilemma was unbearable. Each path seemed as heavy as the other. She took a deep breath, gathering all her inner strength, professionalism and humanity. She slowly turned towards the court, her eyes boring into those of Julian, who was there, sitting, his features drawn with tension, but a faint hope still shining in his eyes. He didn't know if the truth would come out that day, but Clarice knew that a part of herself was at stake in that room. After examining all the evidence, after taking into account all the testimonies, I declare the accused Julian Lemoine not guilty of the charges brought against him. The words she spoke, measured but full of the conviction she had carefully cultivated throughout the process, rang out like a clap of thunder. The murmur that rose in the room was instantaneous, a collective breath of surprise, relief, but also distrust. Eyes met, and the tension in the air seemed almost palpable. Clarice felt a heaviness invade her as she remained standing, her gaze fixed on Julian. There was a moment of absolute silence, as if time itself hesitated before starting to move again. Then his face lit up with obvious relief. His eyes, full of gratitude, of recognition, fixed on her, but in his expression there was also a form of doubt. Victory, for him, was sweet, but it was not without a price. A relationship, an era, a past had been damaged over time and accusations. Clarisse, for her part, felt a complex mix of emotions. She had triumphed over the pressure, she had delivered her judgment with firmness, but at what cost? The weight of this decision was not only measured in legal terms, but in the privacy of his soul. She had chosen the truth, but that truth had eluded her in many forms. Was his fidelity to justice, to the law, not also an act of sacrifice? If she had made this decision, it was to restore what needed to be restored, to correct the injustice. But was it also to free herself from the heaviness of a loyalty that had trapped her in a past that she now had to leave behind? Months passed, but Clarisse could not shake this verdict. It lingered in her mind, often coming back to haunt her in times of solitude, when she was alone with her thoughts. Years later, as she looked back on her entire journey, she frequently returned to that fateful moment when she had to choose. Choosing between institutional justice and loyalty, between what she had always believed and what she had to defend. Julian had certainly been innocent, and their friendship, broken by time and circumstances, had found a new place, but at what cost to her? Clarisse knew that she had been right to believe in him, to bring the truth to light in this courtroom. But more importantly, she had made the difficult choice to understand that sometimes the truth is not hidden behind justice, but beyond it. She had learned in this act that true justice was not always the one we do, but the one we agree to let reveal itself, even when it costs us. She had acted according to her conscience, but she knew that such a choice had changed her forever. The truth was not a simple object to grasp, but a path to follow, often strewn with pitfalls and doubts. And sometimes, justice in its purest form lies in the ability to know how to question one's own certainties.